Hey, what's up, you guys? This is D with MKD58 Media, back again with another movie review for you guys. And this movie review is going to be for the 1990 film Tremors. Alright, now Tremors. This stars Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward. It's directed by Ron Underwood, but continuing with the stars: Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, Finn Carter, Michael Gross, Reba McEntire's in this. Victor Wong is in this. Also, the little girl from the first Jurassic Park who played the little boy's older sister, she's in this. She's in Tremors, but she's 3 years younger than she was in Jurassic Park. But she's in this as well. So she, prior to being in Jurassic Park, she kind of had a little bit of experience, running from animatronic creatures and things like that. So, a little bit of trivia right there, though a lot of people probably already knew that. But anyway, so Tremors came out in 1990. This is a long-time childhood favorite of mine. I was a big fan of this movie as a kid. One of those movies that just came on a lot on like USA Network and things like that. It's just one of those movies there was always an opportunity to watch it, even though there went through periods of time where you couldn't catch the movie on TV a lot, and then there's other periods of time where it's just on TV for like a month straight or whatever. But so watched it a lot as a kid, always liked it, always had a good time with it. Just a really fun movie. Alright, and the simple quick version of the plot is basically a very small population of 14 people town in this small town in Nevada called Perfection, Nevada. I feel like that's a fictional town, but it might be real, but it sounds like a fictional town. But anyway, so it's a small town called Perfection in Nevada, and this town starts to be terrorized by, I think it's three or four of these underground, huge, oversized worms, basically. And that have these snake-like, serpent-like tentacles that come out of their mouth and come up out of the ground and grabs its prey and pulls them into the ground, and to be devoured and torn apart and all that type of stuff. And Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward play two repairmen who basically work together doing a lot of the handyman type repair stuff that this town needs done. They've been doing that for years, and they're two real good buddies, so they kind of get at each other a little bit, give each other shit a little bit, but for the most part they're obviously really close, real good buddies. One day they decide, we're gonna get up out of here, tired of living this lifestyle, and they're gonna leave Perfection. But on the day that they decide to do that is when they discover that there's something going on with these giant worms, right? And stuff goes bad to where they get stranded there, so they can't even leave right away anyways. But that also means the rest of the townsfolk can't leave either if they want to run from these big ass worms. And so Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, a seismologist that's there, and just the whole rest of the townsfolk try to basically outwit, outrun, outlast, and maybe hopefully just win against these giant worms that are terrorizing this little area of town. And that's kind of just a general idea of what's going on here. So this movie, lots of positives for this movie, really not any negatives. I feel like this is a really well made, very simple movie, simple idea, but also a brilliant and creative, fun, well executed idea. Just to have these giant worms that burrow through the ground, pull their victims under the ground. The idea of the movie, when you're watching a lot of these scenes, the suspense comes through really strongly, because I think part of it is subconsciously going back to childhood. Who hasn't played the game where the floor is like lava, or where you're not supposed to touch the ground, you got to get from point A to point B, but you can't touch the ground. Just all those different variations of that type of game. Everybody at some point in their childhood played those. So the suspense of that type of scenario, the whole can't touch the ground type of scenario, is just instilled in all of us. And I think all of us kind of subconsciously can feel that suspense when we see those scenarios played out on the screen. And I think this film capitalizes on that really well. Like, there's a lot of the kind of don't touch the ground or get off the ground moments in this movie that are just very effective, just because of the natural kind of understanding of the suspensefulness of being in that situation, even if it's just for a childhood game. So you can imagine the suspense that would be there when it's actually a murderous creature that's under the ground that will pull you under the ground and kill you if you make noise on the ground. So just a well executed idea, and just a smart idea for this type of film. Now obviously this movie has a lot of kind of B-movie styling to it, and that's of course because this movie is trying to pay tribute to the 50s kind of B-movie style creature features. And it's not even a fault of it. It's kind of the B movie like vibes of this film. It's not even like a bad thing. It's an intentional thing, and it's an entertaining thing, and it's well done as well. So the nostalgia, lots of nostalgia points for this movie, just because of all the things I've been talking about. The cast is a big plus. Great chemistry and everything between the cast. To me, they're all needed pieces of the puzzle. They all fit well together. There aren't any performances here where, like I said, where I feel like, oh, that person shouldn't have played that role, somebody else should have did it, or I wish this character wasn't in the movie, or none of that. I think everybody worked well in the role that they were given. What else? The scenic location. As a kid, I didn't appreciate the location as much. Like, I didn't think about it knowingly. But as an adult, you get older, you can appreciate, beautiful surroundings and design and atmosphere and locales and all that type of stuff. So I really appreciate the kind of Nevada backdrop of this movie. It's just a really kind of good looking setup. It's a really good looking setup. And it's a very sunny movie. This movie does fall into the category of horror. I would almost even call this like introductory horror. Like, it'd be a good movie to if you had a kid that you wanted to kind of ease into watching horror films, but not give them something that's too hardcore. Like Tremors would be a good kind of little starter film for a small kid to get introduced to what's technically considered horror. But that being said, it is a horror film technically, but like majority of the movie takes place like in sunny open air environments, and I think that's one of the interesting things about the film, and actually one of the kind of funner things about the film. It's like the environment it takes place in is not what you would consider classical horror environment type stuff. It's a really sunny day looking movie, but I like it a lot. So I'm gonna leave it there. Actually, that's all I'll say. There's probably a little bit more I could say about this movie, but I won't really go into it. I don't want to make this review too much longer than it already is. My score for this movie, I actually gotta go. I'm gonna go 9 out of 10 for this, and I know that sounds like a high score for Tremors, which a lot of people kind of will scoff at as, like I said, a B movie. But I don't really have any issues at all with this movie. You could say I'm blinded by nostalgia, but when if there's not anything I don't really dislike about this movie, that's just how I feel. I think all the performances are there. All the performances are to the level that they need to be. Every single character, I think, hits the beats they need to hit. The creatures work well. You see them just enough to where they're effective. They're hidden just enough in the right moments to where they continue to be effective. When they're finally shown in full light, for the most part, they still are able to maintain effectiveness. What else is there? Just everything's there. The musical score works especially for the environment, this kind of open air, sunny day, adventure movie type music, you know what I mean? Just this movie just works. It just works. It like I said, it's very much a B movie type vibe to it, but just executed really well. Very efficient. Like I said, the comparison is Predator for me, just in terms of a movie that has a very, very simple concept, and like you can explain the idea very quickly about what's going on and what the movie's about, but it's executed really well and really efficiently. There's no kind of wasted motion, no wasted space. So I compare it to Predator, the very first Predator, in that way, and that movie is just the same thing, a big time, long time favorite of mine. So there's a few things I didn't talk about. I didn't talk at length, I don't think, about Reba McEntire and Michael Gross's characters, Bert, and I can't think of what Reba McEntire's character's name was, but I know how big a part of this film and this franchise they are, especially Michael Gross's character. So I recognize the whole kind of the worm busting through their wall in the basement, and them filling that thing full of just endless amounts of artillery, and that's a super iconic scene from this movie. I recognize and acknowledge all of that. I just know I didn't talk about it too much in this review, but I definitely know all about that and appreciate the whole lore of that scene and what it kind of means to fans of this movie. So that's it. That's where I'll leave this review. 9 out of 10 for Tremors. Definitely check it out if you're into creature feature type horror. That's it. That's where I'll leave it. Thank you guys for watching. Plenty more on the way. All right.